Hello, and thank you for spending a few minutes with us today to learn more about PodcastMotor and how you can put your podcast on autopilot with PodcastMotor. My name is Craig Hewitt. I'm the founder of PodcastMotor, and we've been in business for about 2.5 years at this point here in early 2017, and have been working with some really fantastic podcasters to help them systematize and outsource all of the back-end podcast production for their shows. We've learned a lot along the way, and I'm going to share some of that with you today, as well as answer some of the frequently asked questions about what working with PodcastMotor means and what it's like for you and your show. So let's jump in. The fact is, as you know, podcasting is a lot of work. It has a much higher barrier to entry than something like blogging. There's time to schedule guests, time to record interviews, time to edit the audio that you've just recorded, time to write show notes for your blog post so that you can get people back onto your website and start engaging with them on your turf, time to create featured images for each post so they look great and stand out, and then time to schedule and publish each episode, usually in multiple places. This all takes a lot of time, and you as a business owner or building a brand or an online community have a lot of other things to do. And so the question really is your time best spent learning how to be an audio editing expert or publishing these episodes and articles to your website and to your media host? Or are you better outsourcing it to a team of experts who does this every day, all the time, and really has great systems and people behind their process? So if you're just looking to start a podcast, these are the things that you will need before you really get started and launch your show. So you'll need a website. As I mentioned earlier, you want a place where your podcast listeners can go to engage with you directly on your turf, where you can gather their email address or invite them to a Facebook group and engage with them and begin the dialogue that your podcast is really just starting. The podcast is the top of a funnel and the first touch that a lot of people get with you and your brand, and you want a place where you can continue that down the road. And a website or a community of some sort is a great place for you to be able to do that, and it's something that you control entirely. The next is a media hosting platform. Your podcast episodes are going to be big files, and you don't want to be hosting them in the same place where your website is hosted. So a dedicated media host is something that is really required if you're going to take your podcast seriously. PodcastMotor's invested a lot of time and money in developing a fantastic media hosting platform that I'll talk about a bit later called PodcastMotor Connect. Integrates directly with WordPress, which is the most popular content management system out there, to provide you with a seamless integration so you can publish your podcast episodes really easily, really quickly, and on a very robust platform. After that, you have to start thinking about the podcast episodes themselves. So what kind of format are you going to have? How long are the episodes going to be? Are you going to be just by yourself or with a co-host or interviewing somebody each week? And then what sort of content are you going to create in format of each show? Is it the theme and who your listener avatar is? These are all considerations that you want to have when you're building out your content plan for those first few episodes, especially as you look at how to launch the right way. Once those episodes are recorded, you'll want to create show notes so that when listeners come, they can reference links that you mentioned or a guest's social media handles or resources that you might want to download that associate with each episode. These are great ways to get listeners from their iPhone onto their computer to engage with you and your brand on your site. The next thing you'll need, and we'll talk about this more during our launch planning, is a cover image. This is the image that you see in iTunes for each podcast episode. These are the between 1400 by 1400 pixel to 3000 by 3000 pixel image. You want this to really stand out and pop so that you stand out from the crowd and all the other podcasts in your category in the iTunes library. And then last, you want a really concise, cohesive, proven launch plan that is going to get your show set up for success when you go live. So thinking about this, what you are probably looking for is a complete solution. So you want to start a podcast, but you're not really sure all the pieces and how they fit together and everything. We're going to talk through all of that here in just a minute. But what you're talking about doing is getting some launch planning together so that all this hard work that you're doing isn't for naught, and so that you can launch successfully. You want to create a website so that your listeners have somewhere to go and engage with you and your show's brand. A media hosting platform to house and distribute those MP3 files for each episode, and then ongoing production service so that you don't have to spend hours every week in an audio editing software making your podcast sound great. And this really is what done for you podcasting means to us at Podcast Motor. It means handling everything A to Z so that all you have to do is show up and record an episode, give us a little direction on what you want the theme and the feel of your show and your website to be about, and we literally take care of everything else. So now you might be asking yourself, okay, well, how does Podcast Motor work on an ongoing basis? The goal of the Podcast Motor Concierge Service is for you to record the episode and we take care of everything else. That includes things like audio editing. This is taking out all the ums and ahs and pauses, awkward silences and transitions. If Skype drops halfway through a conversation, we splice that together. We also do equalizing and normalizing and leveling, filtering out background noise and the dog barking or the baby crying in the background. We have professional audio engineers. I'll talk more about our team in a minute, but we have some professional audio engineers that really work magic on audio. We'll give you a lot of guidance on how to record great audio up front so that finished product is as good as possible. But we really have some really magician audio engineers on the team that can make even a less than ideal recording sound great. From there, we go to ID3 tagging. This is embedding actual metadata in the MP3 file that your listeners will download. And these are specific for each episode. So the episode title and information about the show, a little description, the name of the show, your name or your co-host name, all in there. And this really increases that kind of podcast SEO that you get within iTunes and the other podcasting platforms. After the audio files are done, they get handed over to our show note writing team. We have 6 show note writers who are just fantastic at summarizing a podcast episode in a really engaging and enticing way. We like to have a bit of a teaser out there about the show notes so that readers don't just say, oh, this is a summary of what the podcast is about, but it really entices them to go in and listen to your podcast episode, but also gives them a lot of value. Like I said before, website mentions and social media handles for your guests and people that they mention, and the resources that someone who listens to the podcast can go to the website and the show notes for that episode and say, this is the thing they were talking about, or this is the book they mentioned. I'm going to go check that out. And this is a real place where you can add value back to your listeners. Additionally, more and more people are looking for full episode, word-by-word transcripts of their podcast episodes. This is great not just for accessibility for people who are hearing impaired. They can enjoy the wonderful things about podcasting even if they can't listen to them directly, but also for SEO purposes. We find that a 45-minute podcast episode is about 20 pages in a Word document. So if you think about how large that digital footprint starts getting, if you have a full transcript of every episode, it really, by many multiples, increases the amount of content you're creating with each podcast episode. So you can record an episode once, have the show notes, have the transcript, and have the audio file all done out there so people can find you and engage with you in multiple different ways. For our concierge level customers, we create a featured image for each blog post as well. So it's something that has like a headshot of a guest and the episode title in there. So this is something you can use on your site to stand out and really spruce up your blog content a little bit. And then we take all of that we've put together and publish it to your media host and to your website. So literally all you have to do is record the episode and we take care of everything else all the way through the new episode being live. So a little bit more about how our process works. So we use Dropbox for two-way file sharing. When you have a new episode you recorded, stick it in Dropbox and we get notifications in Dropbox when you've added a new episode. That episode then goes into our queue in our process and our audio engineers start working on it right away. We have a dedicated account manager. Her name is Becky. She's absolutely fantastic. And she will handle everything, not just with our team to make sure that your episodes stay on schedule, but if you ever have any questions or clarifications or input about your episodes, you can email her at hello@podcastmotor.com. She'll get right back with you about the details about how your episode is coming and when you can expect it and when it's published. Any questions at all, Becky is there to help, as am I, but Becky's main job is to make sure that you're happy and that your show stays on schedule and to the level and quality that you want. In terms of the timeline for an episode, we ask that you submit new episodes at least 5 days ahead of time so that our team has a chance to do their work and have the quality checks that we have in place to make sure that every episode comes out sounding great, looking great, and goes out on time. And we have a consistent team for your show every time. So the same audio engineer and the same writer and the same person creating the featured image work on your show every time. We have a team of 13 people, and we love pairing two people up to work on a particular show every time. We find it creates a lot of value and increased benefit when that consistent perspective is focused on your show every episode. So a bit more about our team. We have 13 total people on our team between our audio engineers and our writing team, and these folks are fantastic, mostly all based in the US, and our audio engineers have a ton of experience. A lot of them work with live music and events as well. And our writing team has a really great breadth of background and experience in writing anything from blog content to ebooks. And now they're working with us on podcast episodes and have gotten a really neat sense of what good show notes look like and how to create those from each of your episodes. And so the question now is, how can we help you? Here are just a brief list of the services that we offer. So audio editing is pretty self-explanatory, but again, it covers removing the ums and ahs and weird pauses, inserting things like music and intros and outros and any ad spots that you might have, and polishing up that audio through some really sophisticated software tools to make it sound really great. Some of our audio engineers have worked for places like NPR in the past, and they're just a wonderful asset to have on the team and a wonderful addition to your podcast. We make some really great sounding podcasts that we're all very proud of. The show note writing team is the next part. After the audio is done, it heads over to the show note writing team. Concurrently, if you do choose to get transcripts done for your episodes, the finished audio file goes to the transcription team. And that is an in-house team for us. We don't outsource that to something like rev.com. And we're really proud of being able to offer both the show note writing and the transcription for each episode. If you record video, something like a Skype call through a webcam, we do video editing as well. So some folks like to record video along with their podcast episodes and then syndicate that finished video file over to a platform like YouTube or Vimeo. It's really popular. And again, talking about increasing the digital footprint that you have, audio editing, show note writing, transcripts, video on YouTube, you really start getting a pretty big digital footprint with one, say, 45-minute recording that you do if you start incorporating all of these platforms and types of media for your episodes. And then we publish these episodes, podcast episodes, to your website and your media host. If you're doing something like YouTube, we can upload it there as well. We do website design and setup. So as part of our new show startup package, we can help you get your website set up, get your media host configured, and submit your podcast feed to iTunes. I think we really try to, again, take you from A to Z, from you saying, hey, I want to start a podcast, to the show being live. And that total process takes about a month. So let's dive into a couple frequently asked questions that we have here at PodcastMotor. The first one is, how many episodes do I need to launch? And how do I launch? We'll go into this a lot more when we have our consultation call as you're getting started. But the real answer here is we like to have at least 5 episodes done. And from your perspective, that means recording 5 episodes done before we start thinking about launching. It takes our team a couple of weeks to get the 5 episodes done and for you to review, and we go through a bit of an iteration process, especially on those first few episodes, to make sure that everything is just so before we start going on to the 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th and 10th episodes. But those first few episodes really spend a lot of time to make sure everything is just right, and then it gets a lot quicker and easier for everybody from there. But thinking about 5 episodes as an initial launch package is a really good number in your head to think about planning out and recording. You want to launch with a couple on the first day, maybe a bonus episode later that first week, and then getting back with a weekly release cadence after that. So the next question we get a lot is, how does iTunes fit in with my website and media hosting platform? People ask about, do I submit my podcast episodes to iTunes every week? And the way this works is iTunes and Stitcher and Google Sound and Google Play are really search engines like Google. And your podcast lives wherever your feed is created, your podcast feed is created. So for a lot of folks, that's on their media hosting platform. For some folks, that's on their WordPress site. But wherever your podcast feed is created is where your show kind of lives. And things like iTunes read that podcast RSS feed and say, oh, the title of my show is The Podcast Motor Show, and the host is Craig Hewitt. And then episode 1 is, with Mary Lou Tyler, and the title is this, and the media file is hosted here. And so iTunes really just reads that information from wherever you tell iTunes that RSS feed lives. So it's just this big URL, and we'll help you submit all this. But just so you know, you don't submit anything directly to iTunes on a per episode basis. It's just that one time that you submit your show's podcast RSS feed to places like iTunes and Stitcher, and they read that and update their directory automatically multiple times a day. So talking about podcasting equipment, this is one of the barriers to entry as opposed to something like blogging, where if you have a laptop, you can become a blogger. With podcasting, you need a little bit of equipment. So what microphone do we recommend? I use the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. It's about a $50 or $60 mic on Amazon and is fantastic. It provides really high quality sound. It has its own little tripod desktop stand to stand on, and is a great place to get started. If you want to go upmarket a little bit from there, the other one we recommend is the Rode Podcaster. It's a fantastic mic as well, and is probably, like I said, probably just one step up in the quality level from the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. In terms of quality, one thing to consider here is a more high quality mic is also less forgiving. So if you're in a place that's acoustically not perfect or has a lot of background noise, or if you're in a city where there's traffic and noise outside, a quote better mic and high quality mic might not be overall better for you and your podcast. So just something to consider. If you're in a really great place, something like a Blue Yeti mic is a really nice mic because it's a more studio quality mic. But if you're in a place that's not very forgiving, then something like the Audio-Technica is a great mic. I travel a fair amount, and I travel with the Audio-Technica mic, and it's great because I can be anywhere and the sound is always about the same. So what about music for my show? Can you help us find cool music for the beginning and the end of my show? The answer is absolutely. We're a member of a fantastic royalty-free music library, and we can help you pick out whatever music you'd like. Just think about some of the shows that you particularly like and styles and themes of music that you like, and we can definitely help you pick out the music for your show. Similarly, you might say, I'd like to have a professional voiceover done for the intro and outro of my show, and can you help me with that? Again, the answer is absolutely. We work with a handful of really talented voiceover artists, and you have your choice of a bunch of different types, so male or female, American or British or Australian accent, and then the tone and the style is really the big variable. How sort of energetic and edgy and salesy or charismatic do you want that voiceover to be? Again, give us some input. Say, hey, I like how this show does it in this show, but I definitely don't want it to be like this and this. The more information you can give us around that, the more closely we can pair you up with a voiceover artist that will give you exactly what you want. And so how far ahead of my target launch date do I need to get started with PodcastMotor? I touched on this earlier, but the answer is, and we've done this about 25 times now, we've helped start new shows. The answer is about a month. So from the time where you say, hey, I want to start a show, I have an idea about what the show is going to be about and the type of people that I'll have on, about a month is how long it takes us to do all these things, like get your website set up and submit your podcast to iTunes and pick out the music and get the intro and outro recorded, get that first episode dialed in exactly how we want it, and then build up that group of launch episodes. The whole process takes about a month. It doesn't need a lot of work from you, a little bit of input and some creative decision making that we'll do together, but the whole process does take about a month. So if you have a specific target launch date in mind, go back about a month, and that's about the time you should get started with us. So I hope I've answered some questions, given a little insight about what PodcastMotor is and how it can help you launch your show and get your show really set on autopilot. And so the question now is, how can we help you get started with an unforgettable podcast? So we really are absolutely here for anything you need, with relation to getting your podcast started and putting it on autopilot if you have a show going already. If you have any questions at all, there's some contact information below. You can always shoot us an email, hello@podcastmotor.com. All those emails come directly to me, and I absolutely will get back with you with any questions you have. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope to chat with you soon.